My daughter-in-law posted videos claiming I abused her, getting 2 million views. The police investigated me. Then they found her hidden camera setup. The notification sound from my phone pierced through the quiet Sunday morning like a knife. It was 7:43 a.m., and I was enjoying my usual breakfast of black coffee and wheat toast when the first message arrived. Then another, and another. Within minutes, my phone was buzzing constantly with calls, texts, and social media notifications that transformed my peaceful retirement morning into the beginning of a nightmare I never could have imagined. The first text came from my neighbor, Margaret Shun, who lived 3 houses down and had always been friendly, but not particularly close. "Robert, I don't know what to say. I hope you're okay and that this gets sorted out quickly." I stared at the message, completely baffled. What needed to be sorted out? I'd spent the previous evening reading a biography of Winston Churchill and had gone to bed at a reasonable hour, same as always. My life was predictable, quiet, and deliberately uneventful since retiring from my engineering consulting firm 2 years ago. The second message came from my former colleague, James Morrison, with whom I'd worked for 15 years. "Bob, I saw the video. This has to be some kind of mistake or misunderstanding. Call me when you can." "Video? What video?" My confusion deepened as I scrolled through increasingly frantic messages from people I hadn't heard from in months. Friends from church, former clients, neighbors I barely knew, all expressing shock, concern, and barely concealed curiosity about something I knew nothing about. Finally, my nephew Kevin called. His voice carried the careful tone of someone trying to discuss a delicate subject. "Uncle Robert, have you been online today? Have you seen what's happening on social media?" "Kevin, I have no idea what you're talking about. What's going on?" "There's a video of you." "Well, it looks like you, and it's going viral." "Really viral?" "Like millions of views. You need to see this immediately." My hands began to shake slightly as I opened my laptop. Kevin guided me through, navigating to Instagram, where he said the video had been posted by an account called at Justice for Victims. The bio read, "Exposing family abuse and standing up for those who can't speak for themselves." The video loaded with a thumbnail showing a young woman's tear-streaked face. I recognized her immediately, my daughter-in-law, Jessica Parker, who had married my son Daniel 3 years ago. The caption read, "This is what happens when you stand up to an abuser. My father-in-law thinks he owns everyone around him. Hashtag family abuse. Hashtag speak up. Hashtag justice for victims." I clicked play with trembling fingers. The video began with Jessica sitting in what appeared to be her car, tears streaming down her face. Her voice shook with emotion as she spoke directly to the camera. "I don't know how to start this, but I can't stay silent anymore. My father-in-law, Robert Parker, has been emotionally and financially abusing our family for years. Yesterday, it got physical, and I can't pretend this is normal anymore." My coffee cup slipped from my hands, shattering against the kitchen floor. This was impossible. Yesterday, I had spent the entire day at home, alone, working in my garden, and reading. I hadn't seen Jessica or Daniel in over a week. The video continued with Jessica describing incidents that were complete fabrications. She claimed I had grabbed her arm during a family dinner, leaving bruises. She showed the camera what appeared to be fingerprint marks on her upper arm, dark purple against her pale skin. "He controls Daniel completely," she continued, her voice growing stronger with conviction. "He threatens to cut off our financial support if we don't do exactly what he wants. He monitors our bank accounts. He has to approve every purchase we make, and he treats me like I'm nothing but a gold digger who married his precious son for money." None of this was true. While I had helped Daniel and Jessica with a down payment on their house, a $50,000 gift, not a loan, I had never attached any conditions to my assistance. I didn't monitor their finances, and I certainly had never laid a hand on Jessica or anyone else in anger. But the video wasn't finished. Jessica's tearful testimony was followed by what appeared to be secretly recorded footage of me in my own home. The camera angle was low and hidden, as if someone had placed a recording device behind books or decorations. The timestamp showed last Thursday evening. In the footage, I appeared to be having a heated phone conversation. My voice was raised, and I was gesturing angrily with my free hand. The audio was clear enough to hear me saying things like, "You need to learn some respect," and "I won't tolerate this behavior in my family," and most damaging of all, "If you don't straighten up, you'll be out on the street with nothing." The problem was, I had never had that conversation. Not last Thursday, not ever. The man in the video looked exactly like me, sounded exactly like me, but was saying words I had never spoken. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. Stories like these need to be shared. The video had been posted 18 hours ago and already had 2.3 million views, 847,000 likes, and 156,000 comments. I scrolled through the responses with growing horror. This poor woman is so brave for speaking out. Old men like this think they can control everyone around them. Disgusting. Someone needs to call the police on this psychopath. I hope she pressed charges. This is clear evidence of abuse. What a monster. His own daughter-in-law. She's just a kid. The comments continued in an endless stream of outrage, support for Jessica, and condemnation of me. People were sharing the video to their own social media accounts, adding their own commentary about toxic family dynamics, elder abuse of younger family members, and the importance of believing victims. But I wasn't an abuser. I had never raised my voice to Jessica, never grabbed her, never threatened anyone. Yet here was apparently irrefutable video evidence of me doing exactly that. My phone rang again. This time it was Daniel. "Dad, we need to talk. Now." His voice was cold in a way I'd never heard before. My son, who had called me every Sunday for the past 3 years, who brought Jessica to family dinners and holiday celebrations, who had hugged me and thanked me for helping with their house down payment, now sounded like he was talking to a stranger. "Daniel, I just saw the video. None of this is true. I have no idea where this footage came from. But that conversation never happened. Dad, there's video evidence. There are timestamps. Jessica has photos of the bruises you left on her arm. I have never touched Jessica, and I certainly never hurt her. This is some kind of elaborate setup, but I don't understand why or how. The police are already involved," Daniel said, his words hitting me like physical blows. Jessica filed a report this morning. Detective Martinez will probably be calling you today. The police? My voice came out as a whisper. Dad, if what Jessica is saying is true, if you really have been threatening and intimidating her, then you need to get help. Professional help. This behavior is not acceptable, and it stops now. Daniel, I am your father. I have never lied to you in your entire life. I am telling you that this video is fake. These accusations are false, and I have no idea why Jessica would do this to our family. Jessica has no reason to lie about something this serious. She's destroyed her own social media presence by posting this. She's getting death threats from your supporters. Why would she put herself through this if it wasn't true? The call ended with Daniel telling me not to contact him or Jessica until this situation was resolved through proper legal channels. My own son, whom I had raised from birth, taught to ride a bicycle, helped through college, and walked down the aisle at his wedding, now believed I was capable of domestic violence. By Monday morning, the video had reached 4.2 million views. Local news stations had picked up the story, running segments about viral videos exposing family abuse. The engineering consulting firm where I had worked for 23 years released a statement distancing themselves from my alleged behavior, despite the fact that I had been retired for 2 years. My church pastor, Reverend William Thompson, called to inform me that several congregation members had expressed concerns about my presence at services until the allegations were thoroughly investigated. The grocery store where I had shopped for a decade suddenly felt like enemy territory, with whispered conversations stopping when I entered aisles and suspicious glances following me through the produce section. Detective Martinez arrived at my house Tuesday afternoon with a professional manner that somehow made the situation feel even more surreal. She was a small woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and a notepad that she consulted frequently during our conversation. "Mr. Parker, I'm sure you're aware of the allegations that have been made against you on social media." "I'm aware of them, yes. They're completely false. I need to inform you that Mrs. Jessica Parker has filed formal charges of domestic violence and intimidation. We've reviewed the video evidence she provided, and there are some serious concerns about your behavior toward your daughter-in-law." I invited Detective Martinez into my living room, the same space where I had hosted family dinners, birthday celebrations, and holiday gatherings for 3 years. Now it felt like an interrogation room. "Detective, I understand this looks very serious, but I maintain my complete innocence. That video footage is somehow fabricated or manipulated. I have never had the conversation shown in that recording. Mr. Parker, video manipulation of that quality would require significant technical expertise and expensive equipment. What you're suggesting would be a very sophisticated operation. I realize how it sounds, but I'm telling you the truth. I don't know how it was done, but that footage is not authentic. Detective Martinez made notes while I answered her questions about my relationship with Jessica, my financial arrangements with Daniel, and my activities on the day the alleged abuse occurred. Her questions were thorough and professional, but I could see the skepticism in her expression. The evidence against me appeared overwhelming. Mr. Parker, I'm going to need you to come to the station tomorrow morning for a formal interview. You have the right to have an attorney present. After she left, I sat in my living room staring at the walls that had once represented comfort and security. My entire life had been demolished in 3 days by a viral video that portrayed me as someone I had never been and never could be. But as the initial shock began to wear off, my engineering mind started to analyze the problem systematically. Video footage doesn't materialize from nowhere. If that recording was fake, someone had created it using my home, my appearance, and my voice. The question was how, and more importantly, why did I begin to think about Jessica's access to my house over the past 3 years? She had been here for countless dinners, holiday celebrations, and family gatherings. She had used my bathroom, my kitchen, and had even helped me organize some old photo albums in my study. There had been plenty of opportunities for her to place recording devices throughout my home, but creating fake video footage would require more than just secret cameras. Someone would need hours of recorded material to piece together a convincing fake conversation. They would need video editing software, audio manipulation tools, and significant technical knowledge. Jessica worked in digital marketing for a technology startup. Her job involved creating social media content, understanding viral marketing strategies, and working with video editing software. She had the technical skills, the equipment access, and the professional knowledge to create exactly the kind of content that was now destroying my reputation. The motive was still unclear, but the method was becoming more obvious with each passing hour. Wednesday morning brought another devastating development. Someone had found my home address and posted it online, along with my phone number and email. By noon, I was receiving hundreds of messages from strangers expressing their disgust at my alleged behavior. A few supporters tried to defend me, but they were overwhelmed by the tide of public outrage. More disturbing were the visitors who began appearing at my house. At first, it was just curious neighbors and local reporters seeking comments. But as the day progressed, the crowds grew larger and more hostile. Someone spray-painted "abuser" on my garage door. My mailbox was knocked over. A group of college-aged protesters gathered on my front lawn, chanting slogans about believing victims and holding abusers accountable that I watched from my living room window as strangers demonstrated on my property, calling for justice against a crime I had never committed. The irony was devastating. I was being abused by thousands of people who thought they were supporting an abuse victim. That evening, I made a decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing to react defensively to Jessica's accusations, I would investigate proactively. If she had been recording me secretly for months, there might be evidence of her surveillance operation still hidden in my home. I began in the living room, examining every bookshelf, picture frame, and decorative object that Jessica might have handled during her visits. Modern recording devices could be incredibly small, no larger than a pen cap or small button. She could have hidden them anywhere, behind my complete works of Shakespeare, tucked between volumes that I rarely accessed. I found the first device. It was a tiny digital camera, no bigger than a grape, with a lens that would have been virtually invisible from across the room. The device was still warm, indicating it had been recently active. My hands shook as I examined the sophisticated piece of equipment. This wasn't some cheap spy gadget ordered from an online catalog. This was professional-grade surveillance technology that would have cost hundreds of dollars and required technical knowledge to operate effectively. I continued searching and found 2 more cameras. One hidden inside a decorative plant that Jessica had given me for Father's Day, and another mounted inside a picture frame that contained a photo of Daniel's college graduation. Each device was positioned to capture different angles of my living room, creating the kind of comprehensive coverage that would allow someone to record my daily activities from multiple perspectives. But finding the cameras was only the beginning. I needed to understand how Jessica had created the fake conversation that appeared in her viral video. The man in that footage looked exactly like me, but I had never spoken those words. There had to be some explanation for how my appearance and voice had been manipulated so convincingly that I examined each camera more carefully and discovered they contained hours of recorded footage. Days and weeks of my private activities, all captured without my knowledge or consent. Jessica had been watching me like a laboratory specimen, documenting my daily routines and building a comprehensive library of my movements, expressions, and speech patterns. The technological implications hit me like a revelation. With enough recorded footage of someone, modern AI software could create convincing fake videos showing that person saying or doing almost anything. Jessica hadn't just been spying on me. She had been gathering the raw material necessary to fabricate evidence of abuse that never occurred. But why? What possible motive could she have for destroying my reputation and relationship with Daniel? The answer came to me with sudden, devastating clarity. 3 months ago, Daniel had mentioned that he and Jessica were having financial difficulties. Their startup salaries weren't covering their mortgage payments, car loans, and credit card debt. They needed help, but were too proud to ask directly. I had offered to increase their monthly allowance, but Daniel had politely declined, saying they wanted to solve their problems independently. Jessica had been quiet during that conversation, but I remembered her expression, disappointed. Maybe even angry that Daniel hadn't accepted my offer. 2 weeks later, Jessica had asked me privately about my estate planning. She wanted to know if Daniel was my primary beneficiary, what would happen to my assets if I became incapacitated, and whether I had considered updating my will to include her as a named beneficiary. At the time, I had thought her questions showed appropriate concern for their family's future security. Now I realized she had been calculating the financial benefit of removing me from Daniel's life entirely. If I were convicted of domestic violence, Daniel would likely cut all contact with me. If my reputation were destroyed completely, I might even be pressured to change my will to avoid leaving my abusive legacy attached to my inheritance. Jessica could position herself as the supportive wife who helped Daniel escape his toxic father, while simultaneously inheriting the wealth she believed should belong to their family. It was a sophisticated plan that required months of preparation, technical expertise, and a complete lack of moral conscience. Jessica had weaponized social media, artificial intelligence, and public outrage to destroy my life for financial gain. But she had made one critical error. She had assumed I would react defensively, hire lawyers, and fight the accusations through traditional legal channels. She hadn't expected me to investigate the technical aspects of her deception that I called Detective Martinez at 8:47 that evening. "Detective, this is Robert Parker. I found something in my house that you need to see immediately." She arrived within an hour, accompanied by a forensics technician who photographed and cataloged each hidden camera with scientific precision. The timestamp data from the devices would prove that Jessica had been conducting unauthorized surveillance of my home for over 6 months. "Mr. Parker, this changes everything," Detective Martinez said after reviewing the evidence. "These devices prove that Mrs. Parker had the means to create fabricated video content using your likeness. We'll need to have our technology experts analyze the viral video to determine if it shows evidence of digital manipulation. Detective, there's something else you should know. I believe Jessica's motive was financial. She's been asking questions about my estate planning and seemed disappointed when Daniel declined my offers of additional financial support. We'll definitely investigate that angle. Creating false evidence of domestic violence is a serious felony, especially when it's used to damage someone's reputation and relationships." The forensics team worked until nearly midnight, collecting not just the cameras themselves, but also retrieving data from my home computer and internet router that might show when and how Jessica had accessed the recorded footage. Thursday morning brought the first sign that the tide was beginning to turn. Detective Martinez called to inform me that their technology expert had found clear evidence of digital manipulation in Jessica's viral video. The conversation I appeared to be having had been assembled from dozens of different recordings, with my voice artificially generated using AI software to create words I had never spoken. "Mr. Parker, we have enough evidence to arrest Mrs. Parker on charges of harassment, creating false evidence, and cyberstalking. But I want to ask you about something else. Do you think she might have been planning this operation for longer than 6 months? What do you mean? Our analysis of the surveillance footage shows that she was also recording audio from your phone conversations. If she's been doing this since early in her marriage to your son, she might have gathered enough material to create multiple fake videos or other fabricated evidence. The possibility that Jessica had been planning this character assassination for years made my blood run cold. I thought about every family gathering, every holiday celebration, every moment of apparent warmth and affection she had shown toward me. Had all of it been performance while she secretly gathered ammunition for my eventual destruction? Detective, how quickly can you make the arrest? We're coordinating with our social media forensics team to trace the original upload and gather additional evidence about her methods. I'd estimate we'll have her in custody within 48 hours. What? About the video? Can you get it removed from social media? That's more complicated. Once something goes viral, it takes on a life of its own. We can flag it as containing false information, but the damage to your reputation may take months or years to repair completely. 2 days later, I watched from my living room window as Jessica was arrested in her own driveway. The same neighbors who had been avoiding me since the video went viral now gathered to watch as she was handcuffed and placed in the back of a police car. Daniel stood in his doorway, his face showing the same confusion and disbelief I had experienced when I first saw the viral video. The woman he had married, the person he had trusted completely, was being arrested for fabricating evidence of domestic violence against his father. The local news stations that had covered Jessica's accusations now reported on her arrest with equal enthusiasm. Viral abuse video revealed AS elaborate hoax was the headline on Channel 7 News. The story explained how sophisticated video editing technology had been used to create false evidence, and how hidden cameras had been discovered throughout the victim's home, but the vindication felt hollow. While legal justice was being served, the court of public opinion was much slower to reverse its judgment. The viral video had been shared millions of times, and many people would never see the follow-up stories about Jessica's arrest. My reputation had been permanently damaged by accusations that thousands of strangers would always remember, even if they never learned the truth. The real tragedy was the destruction of my relationship with Daniel. Even after Jessica's arrest, even after the evidence of her deception was made public, my son struggled to trust me completely. Years of his wife's subtle manipulation had planted seeds of doubt about my character that couldn't be easily uprooted. Jessica ultimately pleaded guilty to charges of cyberstalking, harassment, creating false evidence, and fraud. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison and ordered to pay substantial financial restitution for the damage to my reputation and mental health. During her sentencing hearing, the prosecutor revealed the full scope of her plan. She had been recording me secretly for over 2 years, building a comprehensive database of video and audio material that could be manipulated to create false evidence of abusive behavior. Her ultimate goal had been to drive a permanent wedge between Daniel and me, positioning herself as the supportive wife who had saved her husband from his toxic father. The financial motive was confirmed when investigators discovered that Jessica had researched my net worth, investigated my estate planning, and even contacted my financial advisor under false pretenses to learn about my investment accounts and property values. She had calculated that destroying my relationship with Daniel would eventually result in her gaining access to my assets through inheritance, while simultaneously eliminating any ongoing financial obligations I might feel toward their family. It was a plan that demonstrated both sophisticated technical knowledge and complete moral bankruptcy. 6 months after Jessica's arrest, I received an unexpected visitor. Daniel stood on my front porch carrying a bottle of wine and wearing an expression of genuine remorse. "Dad, I don't know how to apologize for not believing you immediately. I should have known you were incapable of the behavior Jessica described." I invited him inside, and we sat in the same living room where Jessica had hidden her surveillance cameras, finally able to have an honest conversation about what had happened to our family. "Daniel, you were manipulated by someone you loved and trusted. You had no reason to suspect that your wife was capable of such elaborate deception. But I did have reasons to trust you. You've been nothing but supportive and generous since the day I was born. I let her convince me that your kindness was actually control, that your generosity came with strings attached." We talked for hours about the subtle ways Jessica had poisoned his perception of our relationship. She had reframed every act of paternal love as manipulation, every offer of help as an attempt to maintain control. She had spent years preparing him to believe her accusations by gradually eroding his trust in my character. The viral video had been just the final step in a psychological campaign that began almost from the moment she joined our family. Dad, I want you to know that I'm filing for divorce. I can't remain married to someone capable of such cruelty and deception. Daniel, that's a decision only you can make. But I want you to know that regardless of what happens with your marriage, you will always be my son and I will always love you. A year later, I moved to a smaller house across town, seeking a fresh start in a community where my name wasn't associated with viral videos and public scandal. The engineering consulting firm where I had worked for decades asked me to return part-time, helping with projects that required my specific expertise. Slowly, carefully, I began rebuilding my life and reputation. The criminal conviction of Jessica Parker was public record, available to anyone who took the time to investigate the true story behind the viral video. But many people would always remember the accusations without learning about the resolution. That's the insidious nature of viral misinformation in the age of social media. A lie can travel around the world while the truth is still putting on its shoes, and even after the truth catches up, the damage to someone's reputation may never be fully repaired. Jessica's hidden camera setup had revealed something disturbing about the modern world. With enough recorded footage and readily available AI technology, anyone could create convincing false evidence of almost any crime or behavior. The barriers to fabricating reality had become so low that truth itself was no longer a reliable defense against sophisticated deception. But there was also a lesson about the importance of thorough investigation over immediate judgment. Detective Martinez had taken the time to examine the technical evidence rather than simply accepting the apparent video proof at face value. Her professional skepticism and methodical approach had ultimately revealed the truth. The viral video that was supposed to destroy my life instead became evidence of Jessica's guilt. Her own sophisticated surveillance operation provided the proof necessary to expose her deception and hold her accountable for her crimes. In trying to frame me for domestic violence, she had documented her own guilt with scientific precision. Daniel and I meet for dinner every Sunday now, rebuilding our relationship without the toxic influence of someone who saw our family bond as an obstacle to her financial goals. He's dating someone new, a teacher named Sarah who treats me with genuine respect and has never asked a single question about my assets or estate planning. The experience taught me that family relationships, like all human connections, require constant vigilance against those who would exploit them for personal gain. Love and trust make us vulnerable to manipulation, but they also give life meaning and purpose that no amount of wealth could provide. Jessica Parker is scheduled for release from prison in 18 months. I hope she's learned something about the cost of deception and the value of authentic relationships. But more importantly, I hope she never again has the opportunity to destroy a family for financial gain. The investigation into Jessica's activities revealed an even more disturbing pattern than anyone had initially suspected. Detective Martinez called me 3 weeks after Jessica's arrest with information that made my blood run cold. Mr. Parker, we've been analyzing the data from those surveillance devices, and we've discovered that Jessica wasn't working alone. She had been in contact with someone calling himself Techmaster47 through encrypted messaging apps. This person provided her with the AI software and technical guidance necessary to create those fake video segments. Are you saying this was part of some larger operation? It appears that Jessica may have been involved in what we're calling a reputation assassination service. We found evidence that she had been researching other wealthy families in the area, gathering information about their dynamics and potential vulnerabilities. The implications hit me like a sledgehammer. Jessica hadn't just targeted our family because of her marriage to Daniel. She had been planning to expand her operation, using the skills and technology she'd perfected on me to destroy other families for financial gain. Detective, how many other families might have been targeted? We're still investigating, but we found preliminary research on at least 6 other households. Wealthy retirees with adult children who might be susceptible to family manipulation schemes. This revelation transformed my understanding of what had happened to our family. We hadn't been the victims of a desperate daughter-in-law's impulsive scheme. We had been selected as test subjects for a sophisticated criminal enterprise that combined psychological manipulation, advanced technology, and social media weaponization. The forensics team had discovered Jessica's detailed planning documents, stored in encrypted files on a laptop hidden in her home office. These files contained psychological profiles of family members, strategic timelines for relationship manipulation, and technical specifications for surveillance equipment deployment. She had been methodical in her approach, documenting every family gathering, every conversation, every moment of potential conflict that could later be exploited or fabricated. The woman who had seemed loving and spontaneous during family dinners had actually been conducting clinical research on our emotional vulnerabilities. Most disturbing was a document titled Project Timeline, Parker Family, which outlined a 2-year plan for gradually poisoning Daniel's relationship with me while simultaneously gathering blackmail material and fabrication resources. Phase 1 had involved establishing trust and access to my home. Jessica had volunteered to help with household projects, bringing gifts that contained hidden cameras and gradually mapping the layout of my house to identify optimal surveillance positions. Phase 2 had focused on relationship erosion. Jessica had systematically reframed my actions and conversations with Daniel, turning generous offers into controlling behavior, transforming paternal concern into manipulation. She had created a psychological environment where Daniel would be primed to believe accusations against me. Phase 3 was the fabrication and release of viral content designed to destroy my reputation permanently while positioning herself as the heroic wife who had saved Daniel from his toxic father. Phase 4, which she never reached, would have involved estate manipulation and inheritance fraud, using my damaged reputation and severed family relationships to gain control of my assets through legal guardianship or coercive will modifications. Mr. Parker, Detective Martinez continued, we believe Jessica may have been planning to replicate this entire operation with other families once she perfected her methods with you. You weren't just a victim, you were an experiment. The realization that our family's destruction had been a rehearsal for Jessica's larger criminal ambitions filled me with a mixture of rage and determination. She had turned our most precious relationships into research data for her sociological crime spree. But there was also a darker implication. If Jessica had been successful in destroying my relationship with Daniel and gaining access to my assets, she might have escalated to even more serious crimes. Wealthy elderly victims who became suspicious or resistant might have faced more direct threats to their safety. The investigation expanded as detectives contacted the other families Jessica had been researching. 3 of them reported suspicious incidents that now made sense in the context of her criminal methodology. Mrs. Eleanor Fitzgerald, an 89-year-old widow whose son had recently married a young woman, had experienced a series of accidents that had damaged her reputation in their small community. Someone had been spreading rumors about her mental decline, her inability to manage her finances, and her inappropriate behavior toward her daughter Dash in Law.mr. George Hendricks, a retired professor whose daughter had moved back home after a divorce, had discovered hidden recording devices in his study after reading about Jessica's arrest in the newspaper. He had initially thought they were some kind of home security system his daughter had installed without telling him. Most chilling was the case of the Martinez family, where the elderly father had suffered what appeared to be a stress-induced heart attack after a viral social media campaign questioning his fitness as a grandfather. The campaign had been based on secretly recorded footage that showed him yelling at his grandchildren. Footage that was later proven to have been manipulated using the same AI technology Jessica had employed against me. The scope of Jessica's operation was becoming clear. She had been running a systematic campaign against wealthy elderly individuals, using their own family relationships as weapons to gain access to their assets and destroy their reputations. Mr. Parker, there's something else you should know, Detective Martinez said during one of our follow-up meetings. We've traced the Techmaster 47 identity to a man named Marcus Webb, who runs what he calls a digital reputation consulting service. He's been arrested in connection with at least 12 different cases of fabricated evidence and viral misinformation campaigns. You mean this was Jessica's job? This wasn't personal revenge, it was her profession. We believe Jessica was working as a contractor for Webb's operation. She would identify targets, gain access to their homes and families, and gather the raw material necessary to create viral content that would destroy their reputations and relationships. The business model was diabolically clever. Webb would identify wealthy individuals who might be vulnerable to family manipulation, recent widowers, people with complicated family dynamics, or elderly parents whose adult children were experiencing financial stress. He would then recruit women like Jessica to marry into these families or establish close relationships that would provide access and trust. Once inside the family circle, his operatives would spend months or years documenting private moments, gradually poisoning relationships, and gathering the psychological and technical ammunition necessary to launch devastating social media campaigns. The final phase would involve viral content that portrayed the wealthy target as abusive, controlling, or mentally incompetent. The resulting family chaos would create opportunities for estate manipulation, inheritance fraud, or direct theft of assets from victims who had been isolated from their support networks. Detective, how long had this been going on? Based on our investigation, Webb's operation has been active for at least 5 years. We've identified over 30 potential victims across 4 different states. The total financial damage is estimated to be in the millions of dollars. The realization that I had been targeted by a professional criminal organization rather than my unstable daughter-in-law somehow made the betrayal both less personal and more terrifying. Jessica hadn't destroyed our family because of greed or desperation. She had destroyed it because destroying families was her job. But there was also a strange comfort in learning that her affection had always been completely fabricated. I had spent months wondering what I had done to earn such hatred from someone I thought loved me. Now I understood that Jessica had never felt anything genuine toward our family. We had simply been marks in an elaborate con game. The legal proceedings against Jessica and Marcus Webb became a landmark case in cybercrime prosecution. The district attorney's office used their trial to establish precedents for prosecuting AI-assisted fraud and viral misinformation campaigns. Jessica ultimately received a sentence of 8 years in federal prison, with additional state charges pending in 3 other jurisdictions where Webb's operation had been active. Her cooperation with investigators, providing detailed information about Webb's methods and other victims, reduced what could have been a much longer sentence. Marcus Webb was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution, exceeding $2 million to his identified victims. The judge in his case specifically noted that his crimes represented a new frontier in exploitation that combines technological sophistication with fundamental human vulnerabilities. During Jessica's sentencing hearing, I was given the opportunity to provide a victim impact statement. Standing in that courtroom, looking at the woman who had systematically dismantled my family for financial gain, I felt a complex mixture of anger, sadness, and something approaching pity. Your Honor, Jessica Parker didn't just steal money or damage property. She weaponized love itself, turning the most precious human relationships into tools for financial exploitation. She made my son doubt his father's character, destroyed years of family trust, and caused psychological damage that will take years to repair. I paused, looking directly at Jessica, who sat at the defendant's table without meeting my eyes. But perhaps most tragically, she convinced my son that his father's love was actually manipulation, that generosity was control, and that family support came with hidden strings attached. She didn't just steal from our bank accounts, she stole our ability to trust each other completely. The courtroom was silent as I continued. I hope that during her time in prison, Jessica Parker reflects on the difference between authentic relationships and exploitative performance. I hope she learns that genuine human connection, while vulnerable to manipulation, is also the source of life's greatest meaning and satisfaction. After the sentencing, Daniel and I drove to our old house, the one where Jessica had hidden her surveillance equipment and documented our private family moments for her criminal operation. The new owners had renovated extensively, removing any trace of the cameras and listening devices that had violated our privacy for so many months. Dad, do you think you'll ever be able to trust completely again? Daniel asked as we stood in the driveway where he had learned to ride a bicycle 25 years earlier. Daniel, trust isn't something you lose all at once or gain back overnight. It's something you build through consistent actions and honest communication over time. Jessica didn't just break our trust. She taught us how valuable it really is. We stood there in comfortable silence. Two men who had learned that family relationships require both vulnerability and vigilance, love and wisdom. I want you to. No, Daniel said finally, that I'm going to therapy to understand how I allowed Jessica to manipulate my perception of you so completely. I don't want to be vulnerable to that kind of psychological manipulation ever again. That's probably wise for both of us, I replied. This experience has taught me that good intentions and genuine love aren't always enough to protect against sophisticated deception. The viral video still exists somewhere in the depths of the internet, cached on servers and saved to devices belonging to strangers who shared it during those first chaotic days. Occasionally, someone recognizes my name or face and asks if I'm that guy from the abuse video. I always tell them the same thing. Yes, I'm that guy. And if you're interested in the whole story, you might want to look up what happened to the woman who made that video. Most people are surprised to learn that the tearful victim they remembered from social media is now serving time in federal prison for fabricating the evidence that made her famous. It's a reminder that in the age of viral content and instant judgment, the most important questions aren't always who do we believe, but rather what evidence supports that belief, and who benefits if this story is true. Jessica Parker had counted on people's natural sympathy for abuse victims and their willingness to share outrageous content without investigating its authenticity. She had weaponized social justice and public outrage to serve her criminal enterprise, but she had underestimated the power of methodical investigation and the eventual triumph of documented truth over viral lies, the hidden cameras that were supposed to provide her with raw material for destroying my reputation instead became the evidence that destroyed her criminal career. Her own surveillance operation, conducted with criminal intent, provided law enforcement with a detailed record of her deception and a clear timeline of her crimes. In the end, Jessica Parker's sophisticated plan to frame me for domestic violence accomplished the opposite of her intentions. Instead of inheriting my assets, she lost her freedom. Instead of destroying my relationship with Daniel, she eliminated herself from our family permanently. And instead of establishing herself as a victim deserving sympathy and support, she became a convicted felon whose name will forever be associated with one of the most elaborate cases of viral misinformation and family exploitation in federal law enforcement history. The experience transformed my understanding of both technology and human nature. In an age where artificial intelligence can create convincing false evidence and social media can amplify lies faster than truth, our most important defense isn't technological. It's the cultivation of critical thinking, methodical investigation, and relationships built on genuine trust rather than convenient assumptions. Sometimes justice takes longer than we'd like, but it arrives with mathematical precision for those patient enough to let truth prevail over lies. If this story touched you, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to remember that not everything we see online tells the complete story. Subscribe for more stories about the importance of investigation over assumption. And remember, in the age of viral content, the most dangerous weapon isn't always violence, but sophisticated deception designed to destroy reputations and relationships. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next story.